Hello and welcome to Stylish Chats with Creatives. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking to Joe Brayford. Joe is a London-based food and drink photographer. We actually got in touch because a friend who's been on the podcast before has worked with Joe, and that's how we've started to chat, isn't it?
Yeah, we got in touch through that, and then we started talking about country music and cozy video games, which
Yes.
was I think that was the first time we actually spoke.
Yes, it was the country music because I think you'd gone to a gig or something, and I was like, "Oh my god, I really want to see that person."
Yeah, was it? I think 49 Winchester had just come back from, and then we started listing all the gigs we wanted to go to / are going to in the next
Yeah.
few months.
Yeah, I can't wait. My husband saw that Oliver Anthony is playing in Manchester as well.
Oh,
And he was
nice.
like, should we go? And he's going to see how much the tickets are and stuff, because I'm guessing it won't be too pricey. But
Yeah, I was meant
yeah.
to see Billy Strings yesterday, but I had a job and then was kind of getting home late, so I had to see my friend going on his own, and
Oh,
that was sad. It was at like a small venue in Camden as well. Would have been good.
oh no. That's the worst. When you're like desperate to go and see somebody as well, and you're like racing and in a sweat to get
Yeah.
back from work, and then you're like, this just isn't going to happen.
I was like figuring out, I was like, if my Uber from this job gets home, I can dump my stuff, kind of quick change, get in another Uber. It's not, no, I want to relax at some point.
Yeah, it's not, oh, it's too stressful. I feel that stress.
Yeah.
Um, so how did you start off your creative journey? Did you go to uni? Were you always creative as a kid? Tell me where it kind of started.
So I did study at university. I did photography, and it was a bit of a last minute decision. I'd enjoyed photography for a long time, kind of on and off. I could never like paint. I could never draw. My sister was like very good painter, and I always kind of wanted to do art. I liked being creative, but couldn't get my hands to like do what my brain could envisage. So I was like, I had an idea, really struggled to put that onto paper, and that kind of frustrated me. I think it was my great uncle just let me like play around with his camera on a holiday once, and had this kind of got on with photography, enjoyed it for a while, and it was this like background thing of I like photography, never considered it as a career. Did it at A level, and that was not particularly fun. My school weren't very good for it. I didn't enjoy the course that much.
Mm.
And then I was kind of applying to universities, looking at doing history, sort of didn't like the idea of going the fully academic route. And I was like, you know what, actually, I do enjoy photography. I do love it. I started looking at courses and made this sort of snap last minute decision that like, I'm going to go and do this. I think it will suit me a lot better. It suits how I work. I think I'm more likely to succeed and pass my degree was part
Yeah.
of the consideration. And that was it. Like I loved my university. I loved the degree that I did. I really kind of started to, that was when I first started to feel like I was quite creative. I started to like hone how I approach projects and how I photograph things rather than just like taking pictures and enjoying having a camera in my hand.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that was kind of it. It like really quickly ignited this thing. It's like, okay, now I kind of get myself a bit more creative, like as a creative. And then it's been a big journey from there, and a lot has changed about how I work. But yeah, I've probably had a camera in my hand and like enjoyed photography since I was like 10 or 11. And then yeah, uni was where it stepped up.
So was your course quite a traditional course? Because I've had people on before who have gone to uni and it's been a really traditional course, or they've come on and it's been like a more career focused course and a more kind of this is what you do in real studios kind of based course.
It was a bit of a mix. It was I think it was quite a modern university in how they approach things. It was kind of an up and coming course at the time. They had put a lot of money into rebuilding the facilities. We had like amazing dark rooms, amazing studios. But the course was very like fine art focused.
Mm.
So if you wanted to do more commercial work, they would guide you through that and they would help you with your style of photography. But the course themselves, I think they like fine art. The tutors are all practicing photographers and they make some really beautiful fine artwork. They really push you towards shooting film. They really push you towards developing your own film and printing in a dark room and like more traditional practices, which I think was really great. I would have loved, I think, I didn't understand the career side of photography that much when I came out. But I do think having this like more traditional approach, and they really push you to look at art and understand how you look at art and how you look at photography and how you interpret it and how you create like story and narrative, which now going into commercial photography, I think is part of what's like shaped how I approach work slightly differently.
Yeah, I think it your I was saying to you before we press record, like your website is so nice and the food and drinks that you shoot have just got something else about them. Often I think with drinks photography, it can all look very similar and yours just has this certain, like, I can't quite pinpoint it, but it's got a certain charm that just elevates it and it looks so nice. So I can
Thank
definitely
you.
see where your like fine art like tutors helped you gather that
Mm.
knowledge as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I mean, my first kind of dips into, I guess, what became my style and influenced my drinks photography was like very traditional still life painting. So I started to shoot still lifes, and it would be me with like a very big, very cumbersome camera and some like really old, hot, like tungsten movie lights in a studio. And I didn't really care what I was photographing. I would just like grab random thing. I think one of the first ones was like a pile of rice and a flower, and it was because I wanted to test this camera, but it was all about like lighting and it was all about shape and form, and it was how I kind of built the light around the object. I didn't really care what the object was. I cared about kind of how it looked, and I would look at a lot of painting as kind of the inspiration of that. 'Cause obviously, with painting, there's a reference, but you're building that light in the same way that I like to approach now building light. So I think that's where like the influences came from. So when I first started shooting drinks, I don't think consciously I was thinking of like I'm photographing this drink. I want it to look a certain way, but it was always about the lighting. It was always about the atmosphere and the mood. It was never about this is a Negroni and I'm going to photograph this in a certain way, and this is a beer. It was like this is a still life, and I'm going to photograph it the way I would photograph it if it was a flower or a book or a pear. It was just like an object kind of in front of my camera,
Yeah.
uh, which I think has always been like a nice way of working. I think having worked alongside a few other photographers who shoot drinks who I like really respect, I love their work. They work so differently to me, and I watch them work. I'm like, that's not how I would ever do that. Which I think is quite nice. Everyone builds their own style, but that's very much like I think what influenced how I work.
Yeah, I think watching what other people do is such a nice I just enjoy doing it because I'm like, oh, okay, you've done something differently, so I wouldn't have approached it that way, but now I've got that in my armory as well, and you can
Mm.
kind of just pick the bits that you want and mold it to your style or your next shoot or whatever. I think that's really nice.
Yeah, it's always really interesting. I was on a shoot recently for a bar, and I was shooting kind of for myself. I wanted to shoot some more film, and I wanted to shoot some kind of test stuff for myself. And then their usual photographer who does all their social and commercial work was there. And we were kind of joking about it. We spoke before that we work in like absolute opposite ways. Like she's amazing with natural light, and her styling is very different to me. It's like I love her work, and I'm constantly like looking at it. I'm like, how do you do this? It's just my brain doesn't work like that. And we were talking. It was funny because I love artificial light. I love lighting things myself, and like I said, kind of building this atmosphere and this mood by adding in light myself. Whereas she loves working with the natural light to create this kind of atmosphere. So we were talking about how we would approach something. I was like, well, if I want like something that looks like light coming through blinds, I'll get this kind of light and put this in front of it so it looks like blinds, and I'll close the blinds in the actual room. And
Yeah.
she's like, yeah, like there's blinds, light comes through blind. Like to me, the first thing I would do is like black the room out. And so many times I've shot in studios that have this like stunning natural light, and we're like, yeah, this looks really good. Now let's close the blinds and redo that ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to get back to like the point of where it was, but just because that's how I like to work and that's how I kind of picture things, and I like the security of artificial light. It's not going to suddenly a cloud comes over.
Yeah. I was just going to say sometimes with natural light, you've only got natural light for a few moments and then
Mm.
puff, it's gone. So it's not as reliable as popping lights up yourself, is it?
Yeah, and it's well, like got a lot of respect for people who work with it, because you tend to watch them and they're like really quick and they know what they want and they know how to set it up and they do it very like efficiently. Whereas I'm like, I want to sit and like stare at things. I want to move this around a bit and I want to kind of be slow. And then when I do that, I'm like, oh, the sun's gone. We're in England, so that's it for the day. That was our like 20 minutes of sun over.
Yeah, and you're down south, so you get 20 minutes. We maybe get 10 up here.
Yeah, it's not the country to rely on natural light, really.
No, no. That's really interesting though that your process of work in there as well. And I like the fact that you started with looking at still life paintings as well, because I think there's a lot to be taken from older ways of artwork being expressed, and there's definitely things we can all learn from it, and there's some things that you look at it and you go, I'm never gonna replicate that ever again.
Mm.
Do you have lots of moments where you're trialing stuff when you're doing tests and things as well, where you're trialing lots of different ways out, and then do you have stuff where you like absolutely love it, and then stuff where you're like, actually that needs tweaking, or I'm never doing that again because it looks hideous? Or
Yeah, a little bit. I think because of the way that I work is always like building on something. There's like something very simple at the beginning. It will be like one light, just the drink we're photographing, or just one object, and then we kind of add and build upon it. There's always little things I can take. So I've done it a lot, like with styling. I'm not a stylist. I style a lot of my own shoots. I much prefer working with people who do it professionally, because better at it. It's your job. But every now and then I'll be like, I've got this idea. I'm like, this is going to be great. I kind of lay things out. I'm like, that looks bizarre. I'm like, that looks really unnatural, or that looks really distracting, or that looks awful. But quite often I can take something from that. I'm like, oh, it looks really distracting because it's very big and in front. So I'm like, if we move it kind of around to the back, maybe it sits better if it's got some distance from the subject, or maybe if we put it on something, try and take something from it. I don't think I've done masses where I'm like, there's no value in this, I'm never going to think about this again, I'm going to scrap it. I think there's quite often something to learn, or it's building on it, or adding to it, or taking some things away, or we've overcomplicated it. Because almost always it's trying to get to an end point. It like starts with a bit of an idea, or it starts with somewhere we're trying to get to, or it starts with something really simple, and then it's just taking elements in and out.
yeah, I'm with you on that as well. When I'm styling stuff and it's almost like a giant puzzle, and you've got to compose something, but get all your puzzle pieces in the right section, but they're not all the same size. They, like you say, they look different in different points of perspective, and that can take you time, which I think for me, sometimes clients don't give you that grace of like just giving you another 10 minutes to sort it out, especially commercially.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just look at it, and I've looked at images that have gone through approval and then gone, oh, there was something wrong there. And it's because
Yeah.
you're being rushed like commercially, because you've got, I don't know, 6 shots to get through that day. But it's nice to sit and sort that jigsaw puzzle out and go, right, okay, yeah, that's too big there. That needs to come forward. That needs to go back. But that's nice you're doing styling on your own as well. Like, do you enjoy that part of it, or?
I do. I think I much prefer working with a professional stylist, because quite often, again, like I'll have an idea, and it's a bit like going back to when I tried to paint and tried to draw. It's I've got an idea, but I get a little bit frustrated when I can't realize it to its full potential. So with like photography, I feel like a lot of the time I can, because I know my limitations, I know the equipment I'm working with, I know everything I'm doing kind of very well. With styling, if I've got this idea, I'd much rather talk it through with a professional, and they can give their input, and then actually they're going to do a better job of realizing my idea. It's the same reason like we talked earlier about Fran, who puts in touch. It's the same reason I like working with a retoucher now, is I can retouch, but she's so much better at realizing my vision and so much better at executing what I'm trying to do. So I can be really ambitious. I don't have to like work within my own means and work within my own limitations. I can go a bit mad with it.
Yeah, that's really it's really good, like harnessing the other creatives around you as well, because sometimes just being on set with a photographer, from my point of view, is that you bounce ideas off each other, and actually the tiny idea you start with isn't what you end up with, because you've pinged around the room for 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden you're like, what about this, what about this, what about this? And then if you work really well collaboratively, can't get the word out, you end up coming out with something incredible and then translating that into retouch as well, where a retoucher can elevate it even more. It just, oh, sweet, sweet success.
Definitely. The more people who, especially if they're people that I work well with, I know how they work and I like their ideas and we gel well, like just get us all on set, get everyone in there and just kind of, like you said, just start bouncing ideas around. And it will be, when you've got creative people in a room like that, I like that. And when you're all comfortable with each other, you don't have to like stick to your job.
Yeah.
So I quite often feel comfortable if I'm with a stylist giving my insight, and I like as well if I'm working with a stylist, I don't want them to feel like they can't mention things to do with the photography or the lighting. If they've got an idea, the worst case scenario is it doesn't work. But everyone bouncing around ideas is how you come to the really exciting conclusions, and you come to these new ideas. Like you said, they weren't what you had on paper at the beginning, but it's better because it's 4 or 5 people in a room who are all really creative and they're all invested in this project. Just kind of like chucking ideas. Yeah, we'll try that. That comes from a completely different perspective because this person is working on the styling and I'm used to working behind the camera. So they have a different view on how you could photograph something or how you could light something that maybe I wouldn't think of, which I think is great. There's nothing worse than like a little echo chamber where everyone just agrees with, like, you kind of got to have some different perspectives and a bit of disagreement and trial and error.
Yeah, massively. And I think that's where you get the best out of people, is that there's a bit of a chat about it and like experimentation and, you know, just trying stuff. Because similarly, like whenever I'm on set and someone's like, oh, can you hold this scrim? What do you think to this? And by the end of it, you end up with such a better image because you've all worked together. Do you have like a set team that you work with, like styling wise, or other photographers? And do you have like a little crew that you work with?
It's coming together at the minute. So the kind of longest term person is my assistant, who is a friend from uni. So he worked as like a studio assistant in big commercial studios for a long time after uni. So when I started doing this full time and I started to need someone like helping out on set, I think he had just gone freelance actually around the same time as me. So we started working together, and he just has so much knowledge from working on these big studio sets that is not how I've worked, because I was starting to build my business. I was working smaller jobs. And he has a very different way of approaching things, but because we're good friends outside of this, we've just like gelled together. I think he's been a massive help. We've been like, some of the project work on have been like a great kind of collaboration. And then I'm kind of adding people like that. So again, like Fran is doing a lot of my retouching whenever I can work with her. It's been great. So I'm now adding more people who do like video. I've got another assistant who I use who is really good at styling, and has worked a lot more on like video sets, which is really handy because I'm moving into video a bit. So I'm kind of finding the people that I like to work with. I've been testing with a few people for other jobs, and yeah, the goal is to have like a collaborative team. So when we have commercial jobs, we can all work together. When I'm doing like personal work, they're people that I get on well with anyway, and we talk about our personal work a lot, and we talk about what we're doing creatively. And it's just nice to have that little like community as well as a team that I work with.
Yeah, I think when you're freelance, having the community and the network around you is really important because, again, like we were chatting just before we press record, it can be quite lonely sometimes, especially when you're self-employed and you look around and you think, oh God, everyone looks so busy and everyone's doing loads of other stuff. And imposter syndrome comes in, and you actually, everybody's pretty much in the same boat. So it is so nice to have that network around you and, you know, people that you can collaborate with and get really stunning work together. You know, it's good.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have, yeah, just for that, to talk about, yeah, the industry and how work is, in the same way that like if you go into an office every day and there's 10 people in the office, you talk about work and you have that kind of mutual understanding of it. But even just from like a creative perspective, I think one of the things I really missed for a good few years after uni that I felt I didn't have, and it took me a long time to realize what I was missing, was every day at uni there would be the dark room had a big like communal table, and then you go off into separate dark rooms and everyone would sit around it. First person in would like put some music on. Everyone is talking about their projects, talking about their ideas. Everyone's looking at each other's work on the wall. Like when you're tweaking prints, everyone would crowd around and like give feedback, and everyone would go to the pub afterwards and talk about cameras and projects and photography and work they were looking at. I think when I finished, I was working in the drinks industry, and a lot of my friends from kind of my hometown were working not in creative job or not in like similar creative jobs to me. I just didn't have this network of people to talk to about these things. And now that's what I'm like finding really valuable again, is I'm just spending more time with creative people. I'm talking to more creative people, and I feel more creative off the back of that.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps. Again, it goes back to the thing of having creative to bounce ideas off of. And
Mm.
it's something that like I definitely have found running the podcast and put myself out there a little bit more. You kind of, people come out of the woodwork and go like, oh, I've got this idea, oh, I've got this idea, and it might not stick, but it's just nice to have the ideas bounce around and chew them over and go, well, what do you think about this idea, what do you think about this? And you just get buzzing again. Then you're like, right, okay, I can do this idea. And you know, it's nice. I think the
Yeah.
community is something that as freelancers I think we sometimes struggle with, because there's an element of competition as well, right?
Mm. Yeah, I was going to say that to you. Like, it must be interesting doing this because you not only speak to a lot of creatives, but they're from like every industry of like every creative industry, all the different corners of it, all the things that you may have worked alongside or that you do yourself or like you've never encountered before. But yeah, I think there is that like competition. I think it's where I'm keen to have a style to my photography. Like that was partly drilled into me by my university, was like the idea of looking at a lot of work, consuming a lot of work, but also that influencing your style and how you work. And we met a lot of photographers who would talk a lot about their process. And that's where I think like there shouldn't be massive competition. As long as you're doing something that like you're proud of that is slightly different, I would like to be hired based on my photography. I think I get the occasional job where I'm being hired and they'll talk to 10 different people and what they want is a price list.
Mm.
That's fine. But the jobs that I really love are when people come to me and they're like, we really like your photography. And quite often they'll send me like 3 or 4 of my images and like, we love these. This is what we're doing. And I'm like, that's great because I'm being hired for what I do. I don't feel that there is competition there, because equally if someone came to me and like, we want this, this and this, and I've had it, but people have come to me and basically what they want is someone else's style of photography, but quite often it's someone who is a lot more expensive, someone who is very unattainable to that brand.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the only place competition happens, and that's not going to change. Someone who charges 10 times the amount I do because they're doing huge scale like commercial video for like TV adverts. Neither of us is stealing each other's jobs because we're not crossing over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
it's a
sorry.
difficult one. Sorry. It's a difficult one because sometimes you can see what other people are doing on social media as well and kind of try and compare yourself. And actually, like you say, we've all got our own style, we've all got our own unique way of approaching things. And it must be so, you must feel so proud when a brand comes to you and goes, we really like these images and this is what we'd like from you. And you must be like, oh yes, I've made it.
It's great. Yeah. Anytime someone sends me their like deck or their brief or their mood board and it's got one of my pictures in it and they're like coming to me, I'm like, yes. Like they act like that's such a great feeling. And it really like it kind of validates everything that you do up to that point, because it's like, okay, we're not only being recognized, like I say we because I do see a lot of what I do as like more collaborative the more I'm working with a team. Um, and it's not only that we're like producing good work, but it's producing work that people are recognizing as being our work.
Yeah.
Like it's starting to have a style, it's starting to have something that sets it apart, it's starting to have something different about it, which is always kind of important to me. It's always valuable to me to not feel like I look at, and social media really makes it tough because everything's an algorithm and everything's like pushed to you based on what you look at.
Yeah.
And so I have to be like, okay, I am actually sticking to my style. I am still looking outside of the 100 images I see that are like very, very similar. Yeah, it's a great feeling.
It also, it takes a long time, and I think this is what people don't realize as well. It takes time to get your own style and to be almost stubborn about it and be like, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm going for. That takes such a long time that I think people kind of gloss over as well sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's easy to want to do it overnight, and I think there's kind of two ways as well. You have like what you want to do with your style, so you can look at a load of work, you think about what you like, and you sort of say, okay, this is how I want to photograph. This is the work that inspires me. This is what I want to do. And then 3 years of shooting stuff down the line, suddenly it's changed just by virtue of like how you organically work and how you naturally approach things, and maybe the people you work with, maybe the brands that you're working with, maybe just like something changes. And I think that's when you find, and like I'm sure 3 years down the line, my style is going to be different to what it is now. I think it has to kind of evolve. Things have to change, and you do learn more, and you do like learn yourself a little bit better.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely like it doesn't happen overnight. Like I said, I've had a camera in my hand for so long now. It's been 11 years since I started uni and really started to like think about my style as a photographer. And I'm not convinced it'll be the same in 2, 3 years. And it's certainly not the same as it was 3 years ago. And it's absolutely not the same as it was like 11 years ago. It's
Yeah.
like a constantly evolving thing.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I've been styling for 12 years, 13, oh, I don't know, 13 years maybe.
Hmm.
And it's so funny when you think about how how your style was back like 10, 11 years ago, and I'm like, Jesus, I would not do stuff the same way now. But it's picking up all those like tips and tricks and
Hmm.
evolving to get to the point where you're like, right, okay, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I do the best, this is the way I work. And also when you're freelance as well, is finding the clients in that you gel with. That can be
Hmm.
quite hard as well when, to begin with.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of it comes like you build confidence in yourself over time as well. I think when you first start doing it and you're first kind of booking clients, there is an element of like self-doubt, and I don't think that ever, maybe it's just me, maybe it does go away. I don't
No.
think that ever truly goes away. I don't think it ever will. I think there's always going to be like a little element of like self-doubt, and I think it is typical of like a lot of creative people to be quite critical of themselves, and of their work. But it's starting to gain that confidence in like how you talk to clients and how you present your ideas to them, and presenting them with like a bit more confidence rather than like that air of like I think this, and so it's like I know this because I have experience, like I've done this
Yeah.
loads of times and I know exactly what we're talking about, and you're hiring me because I know and because I've done this before and because you've seen my work. You start to like have a little bit more confidence, especially when you're talking with clients, and especially when you're talking like about your own work and about what you make.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think the confidence comes with age and with doing what you need to do day in, day out. And then you go, oh, actually, I need to tweak that because I the maybe haven't worded something right, or maybe I've been a bit brash, or like maybe been a bit meek. But also I think I've chatted to my friends recently, self-employed creatives, who we've all got imposter syndrome. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's so hard to just tell it to like fuck off.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're sat there, especially because it's been a quiet year. A lot of people have been like, well, am I actually good at what I do? And then they get booked and then they're having an anxiety attack because they're not sure that they're
Yeah.
even good anymore. And yet they are all good. It's just that, we've been quiet and the imposter syndrome is coming knocking.
Yeah. Have you had the I feel like I've had it a few times this year where you're like sending an email where you've got to be quite kind of forward with what you're saying, and you just sit and stare at it for like hours or a day or 2 days, and you're like, can I actually hit send on this? Is this going to go down okay? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it ever goes away, especially like you said, when it is a kind of quiet year, when there is less work knocking about. It's
Yeah.
so easy to sit and blame yourself constantly.
Yeah, massively. And I think you're right, like having that procrastination as well, or having the fear of sending something, um it can like paralyze you. It definitely, like, I've got loads of projects on the go at the moment, like loads of personal craft projects. I haven't finished any of them because I've always got like too much to do that I then
Yeah,
sit thinking about what I've got to do and don't do any of it.
yeah, yeah. That's the one where you feel like there's so much to do that instead you just do nothing. Instead you just stare at a screen. Like I even get like I get it sometimes with like recreational things because we don't have working hours. We don't have like 9 to 5, and then once I close my laptop, I'm done and like it's my time. I'll be like, you know what, I'm going to take this evening off. I'm going to play a video game. I'll sit and stare at a list of video games for like 2 hours and not actually play one because I'm like, once I pick one, I've committed that like I'm not working, but there's stuff I could be doing.
Yeah.
If I don't do the stuff, I sit there for 2 hours and stare at some games and think about which one I could play, and then it's too late.
This is so,
It's,
I'm,
it's such
I'm,
an odd.
oh, I'm so glad it's not just me that does that though.
Yeah. I'm convinced I spend as much time like looking at a Steam library as I do just playing the actual games in it.
Yeah. And
It's
mine's like a Netflix thing as well. I'll look at Netflix and be like, And then I'm
mm,
like, oh, well, I'll just stick Gossip Girls or Gilmore Girls on. And I'm like, I have watched these 7, 8 times. I know what
yeah,
happens. Why am I going back to this? Why don't I commit to something new? And I can't do it.
yeah. It's so difficult. Like the comfort TV programs that you've watched over and over again just continue to be comforting.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how many times I've watched like Peep Show just when I'm retouching on a screen, and like I don't watch it, I don't even look at it. It just like exists as background noise.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I've got a little bit better, I think, because I have a screen above me when I'm working on retouching, and then like my main screen, I tend to just have something on there. I've got a little bit better at trying to watch new things, but trying to watch them like I've tricked myself by saying it's like work. I'll watch films that I've always wanted to watch, particularly if there's like a cinematography element to it that I've been told it's like really worth watching. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to watch it, and I get to watch something new, and I kind of tell myself it's a productive like work thing.
Yeah.
And then if I do zone out for like a couple of minutes and actually watch it, or I take like a little break, I'm like, okay, I'm actually getting something from this because I am finding it interesting. I am taking something from it, and I'm probably being somehow inspired. Whereas
Yeah.
like, there's nothing left I can take from Peep Show. Like I've taken all that has to give, and now I'm just listening to the comforting sounds, and could probably just play it in my head.
Yeah. I'm the same with Gilmore Girls. My other half said to me the other day, he was
It's so
like, you've not,
good.
it's so good. And he's
I'm
like,
on my second watch. It's changed all my opinions on it.
yeah, I mean, I normally have it on by now. It's normally on, and I've not had it on this year. I've just not gone for it yet. It's coming, I
Hmm.
know, but it's such a comforting show.
It is
Even though,
winter TV as well.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like Stars Hollow is just where I want to be for Christmas.
yeah,
Like it's so comforting.
definitely. Have you seen these TikToks? I think there's like a Stars Hollow kind of, what do you call it? Like part of Warner Bros or something in America,
Uh,
and people have been doing little videos. They've been going around and like looking at the studio and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I want to be there.
I want to do that. I had never seen it until my partner like sat me down and made me watch it, and we got through it so quickly. It was almost like every single day I was like, should we watch? Let's watch Gilmore Girls. Watch Gilmore Girls.
Yeah,
So we're now rewatching it because a lot of my like opinions on characters, she was like, I'm not really sure about that. Do you really think that? And
yeah.
has made me rewatch it to reevaluate some of my choices. And weirdly enough, Gossip Girl is next.
Oh, Gossip, the original Gossip Girl. Honestly, chef's kiss. It's so good. But when I initially went quiet after my busy summer, this I just had it on, and I became at one with the sofa and Gossip Girls, and it was just on, and I was like absorbed, and I was like, oh my god, he's doing what? And I'm like, this is like, I don't know, is it 10 years old, if not longer, maybe even 20 years old, and it still looks so good, and the fashion's really good, and you know, the casting and everything.
Hmm.
The storylines are a little bit wild, they do get a bit wild, but
Yeah.
it's kind of, again, quite comforting TV. If you've, as soon as you watch it once, you're like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, I'm in the rhythm of this is good.
I'm looking forward. So I've only seen one scene at the moment. My partner's watching it, and I'm gonna catch up to where she is. But she sent me it because I. It's a weird thing that I have in. I really like when I'm watching film and TV, especially older stuff, trying to identify cameras from like snapshots because I've bought and looked at and been through so many film cameras in my life that I feel like I've looked at most of them at some point.
Yeah.
And there'll be like a little 1 second snapshot, and it's become a thing with me and my partner that I try and guess what, or like try and figure out what the camera is, and then we'll like research and find out. And there was a whole scene in a studio where my partner was like, "Oh, it looks like this camera that you own, but it's shooting digital onto a screen." She was like, "Have a look, see if it's like this really weird thing." And I spent like 20 minutes analyzing this scene and trying to list what every bit of equipment that they had on this table was. So I now feel like I have to watch it because I've sat and like mulled over that scene for so long. It would be weird if that's all I've seen of Gossip Girl.
Yeah, you definitely need to get into the storylines, definitely. 100%. Um, so I've got a couple more questions for you.
Absolutely.
This one is, what is the most challenging part of your job?
Um, it's going to be something like really boring. It won't be anything to do with photography. It will be something to do. Well, I keep saying this like I don't know. It's my answer. It would definitely be something to do with like balancing my time. I think there's so many kind of moving parts to what I do. From kind of a client will contact, and then it's talking through what they actually need and putting together a package for them, and then it's into putting together like the ideas and the mood boards, and then it's booking in my team, and then it's booking locations, and then it's shooting, then it's retouching, then it's amends. And if there's like 5 6 projects going on, all of those things are overlapping and all of those things are crossing over. So I think it's definitely just keeping on top of everything that I have going on, everything that I have that I need to do to a certain deadline, and like planning my time around that. And it almost gets harder when it's quiet because you have things to do, but all the time and fitting it in. When it's really busy, I sort of go into like autopilot and everything like happens and comes together, and you know how much time you have, and my diary's so like locked down. But yeah, the hardest thing is definitely just like managing what I do and managing myself and keeping the like motivation to be on top of those like admin tasks that have to be done but are not as exciting as taking pictures and editing and finishing projects and sharing stuff on Instagram.
Yeah, that's the hardest bit, is kind of the like wearing all the hats at once, right?
Yeah, I imagine. I think it's the same for anyone who's like a one man band and they do everything. I think that will always be because my job is photography, your job is styling. We all kind of do. There's difficult clients, there's difficult shoots, there's difficult shots that you have to get. There's things that are tricky, but I think because you tend to enjoy that problem, or at least I really enjoy that like problem solving element. Like you said, it's kind of like this puzzle that you put together and it's really satisfying. You don't actually get much satisfaction from admin. So you have to motivate yourself to like do it. There's no fun in it, but it does have to be done. It's important. It's what gets you to that end point where you get to do the fun stuff. So I think, yeah, that's the toughest thing, is just like being on top of all of the different like tiny tasks that need to be done.
Yeah, it's I'm with you on that one. Like, I find even categorizing my receipts on QuickBooks, I'm like, oh my God, like my purse is bulging with all these receipts, and I'm like, it's such a boring 10-minute job, and
Yeah,
I probably do it every 2 months. And I should probably do
yeah,
it when I get a receipt, because it make life so much easier. But you just have to keep on top of them. But I think as well, when you're self-employed, you're like, right, I've got to keep up to date with my website, up to date with my social media, up to date with XYZ. And then that's not the fun part of being a creative, is it?
yeah. It's those small tasks that like mount up as well. Things like receipts.
Yeah.
It's on paper, it's so easy if you do it when it needs to be done, but you
Yeah.
don't, and then it mounts up, and then it's a bigger task. And like organizing my hard drives is my like that's my one. I sit and stare at these like mismanaged hard drives full of terabytes and terabytes of images. I'm like, I should really sort this out, but it's such a big job now, and that gives me less motivation to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
It's harder because no, like I don't have to do that. No one relies on me. It's not like admin where I need to get something to a client. It's for my own. Like I would feel so good when I saw my hard drives out. When I get around to it afterwards, it's just lovely until I mess them up again. It's, it's such a nice few weeks until I'm staring at like this cluttered mess again and wondering where files are.
But I have in the same kind of vibe, my kit is like that. And I'll
Oh,
tidy
I
my kit
bet.
out and I'm like, oh, this is so beautiful. I can find everything. Get on a job, all parts of my kit are on the floor and it's all a gigantic mess. I launch it all back into the case, do it up, shove it in the boot, and it's done. Don't think of it.
Yeah. Do you have like a prop storage as well then that,
Not at the
or do
moment.
you like rent a lot of props?
I rent a lot of props at the moment. However, I have just set up my own prop hire arm to my
Oh,
business
cool.
because I've collected quite a lot. So I'm just kind of um, gradually hiring that out. But eventually I will have a little industrial unit, yeah, but just not at the moment. Like
Mm.
it's, it can kind of stay in the house at the minute. It's kind of, we're not quite bursting at the seams.
Yeah. That's yeah, my partner is sick of glassware. Like
Yeah.
the amount of glassware that is just because after every like it gets ordered for a shoot and because like I said I do a lot of styling myself, it's kind of there, but I have so much. I'm like, it's this really nice, like lovely glassware. Yeah, of course I'll take it home.
Yeah.
And she's just tired of me coming home with like a box of 10, 15 glasses and just looking for little spaces that I can fit them in.
Yeah. We're the same. Like this spare room is just chaos at the moment. There's just bits of props everywhere, but it's always handy to have those extra bits anyway. And um,
Mm,
I just thought, wow, I can hire them out. They can make me some money on the side, and then
yeah,
eventually have a little prop hire place myself. Um,
nice.
but yeah, it's a nice side thing as well because you'll see stuff. I'll see stuff regularly and just be like, right, okay, I can grab that, or maybe there's
Mm,
like some little gems in the charity shop, or you'll see stuff or you inherit stuff as well, and it's everything's got a nice little charm to it.
yeah, it must be nice to see it get used as well because I guess there's an element of like stylists I work for just have like an eye for things and how they could be used as well.
Yeah,
Um, so I'll see things, I'm like, oh, that's nice, and then one day I'll figure out how to use it. But I suppose stylists who will look at things like, oh, this would be really good in X scenario, or this would go really well with like this color, or this food, or this drink, and it must be nice being kind of validated that someone wants to hire these things. It's like, yeah, I found that, I saw that in a charity shop, and I was like, I saw something in that, and now
yeah,
people will pay me to use it.
yeah. That's it. It's yeah, it's definitely one of those like you see stuff and you're like, oh, the light through that will help, and then oh, that will do something here, and so that's really helpful.
Hmm.
It's just a stylist eye, I think, as well. But
Yeah,
I've got one last question for you, and it is
absolutely.
a biggie, but answer it
Oh
in
god.
whichever way you want, because some people have answered this with a career view, some have answered it with a personal view as well.
Okay.
So, what inspires you, Joe?
Oh god. um, I might end up just going back on this because I'm really bad with when someone like I'm on the spot with a question. I'll be like, this is my answer, and then 2 minutes down the line, I'm like, no, that was wrong. I think the thing that most regularly I think gets me excited about creating something like photography is the thing that I do. It's the art that I pursue more than anything else. It's it can sound really cliche for a photographer, but it's anything to do with like light. So much of how I photograph is built around light, and so often it will be like a crack of light coming through a window in like a cafe I'm in. Could be the most like boring. I really like mundane photography that looks beautiful. Like
Yeah,
I am constantly fascinated by it, and like if I'm sat in a really boring room that is not overly exciting, and suddenly there's this like little bit of light that adds something to it. Um, I think that's the thing that gets me the most like excited to do to create art, to do photography, to take pictures, whatever it is. And it's why I always just have a camera on me because I'm like those little moments. I think about it for like days or weeks if I like miss something like that and don't get to photograph it. That's probably what gets me the most excited, I guess, in terms of like inspiration, the things that I look at a lot. I don't know. I think talking to people about my work inspires me a lot. I think, like I said, I missed that for a long period. I really missed talking to other creatives. And I think getting the opportunity to feel like a wanky artist is really, really big to me. I avoid it so often if I'm talking to like my friends who I've known for years and we hang out all the time, but who didn't do like creative degrees with me and don't work in like, I'm not going to say they're not creative jobs, not like the traditional style of like art job that I do.
Yeah.
I avoid talking about my work in the way that I would with like my assistant who I studied with, or with like other friends that I went to uni with, or like other people who work creative jobs. I like that talking about in a really wanky, like this picture of a drink that to most people is a picture of a drink. This was inspired by some like French etching from the 18th century that I saw this one time and have like remembered. And like, this is the story that it tells to me. And this is like the atmosphere I was building. This is how I want people to feel when they look at it. And all these things that like go through my head and make me feel a bit silly to talk about sometimes. I love feeling like comfortable talking about them and like being able to get excited about all the like artistic wankiness about my work. Like, I can't explain it another way. It seems
No.
like a rude way to put it. But I think, that like, I really like that feeling. I think that inspires me a lot, and that I always go away with some new perspective because they always have something to give back to me, and they always have some like insight more than just like, oh yeah, cool photo.
Yeah.
Like, they'll say something and then they'll talk about their work and then they'll share something and they're excited to then share their stuff. And I'm like, you get that back and forward, that I think I always go away like, I want to take some pictures. I want to go and do something. I've got a new idea and I've got something I could add to that photo if I did something similar.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think the inspiration is drawn from other creatives as well because they're so they can understand your like where your vision has come from and where your inspirations come from. I mean, it's like me chatting to my husband who's a lorry driver. He'll go like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Bless him.
Yeah.
Bless
Yeah.
him.
It's like, and it's great. And I really like those conversations with people where you just show some work and they're like, oh, these are really nice. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. I made that. That was me.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you want that like deep dive. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know how I would go about describing it. Like, it just takes me back to sitting around the big communal table, or like a bit pissed in a pub with like 10 other photographers, and everyone's like arguing about how they print or what paper they like the most, and everyone's talking like just those like deep arty kind of things that you get,
Yeah.
when you're surrounded by creative people and everyone's just talking.
Yeah, massively. Wow, that was such a great answer, and I'm fully with you on that. I completely love chatting to other creatives and going around art museums and going like, well, what do you do? What do you think to this? How does this make you feel? And it's just I love that sense of community within the creatives. But thank you so much for coming on today. I've
No,
really,
thank you for
really
having me.
enjoyed chatting to you. I found out so much about you, and I really, really implore everybody to go and have a look at your website because your stuff is fantastic. And I think you're doing really beautiful things. And it's just been so nice to chat to you.
No, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And like, I feel like I hope we go to a country gig at some point together,
Yes,
or like I hope we can work on something together.
Yes,
I feel like, yeah, we've had this hour-long chat. I feel like we're ready to go and watch some country music now.
Yes, yes. Thanks,
But
Joe.
no, yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on. It's like I said many times on this, I just like talking to people about creative stuff and about my work and about their work and about things. So this has been great fun.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. please rate, follow and share, as it really helps this little podcast out. And if you have found value in the podcast and you have the means to, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. This will help keep the podcast going. Join me next week for another fantastic guest. Bye!